then you went on to Philadelphia Orchestra, right down the street.
Yeah, I mean, there were 4 years in between there.
Okay.
That I did other things. I did some teaching, I did some freelancing. I went back to school. I studied with Lawrence Lessert in the
That's
conservatory,
right. Yeah.
which made a huge difference. I mean, that was really important.
He was a brilliant cello teacher. Yeah.
Yeah, yes, yes. And then I went to Philadelphia. And so that was a huge sudden. I mean, I went like smack right into the first stand with Riccardo Muti and you know, it was just, it was very intense, you know, and every week a concert with, all this repertoire and, and most of it I didn't know, you
Hmm.
know. I knew a lot of rep, but not
That
that.
kind.
Yeah,
Yeah.
uh,
Premieres and everyone's fully aware that it's the Philadelphia Orchestra, I guess. I mean,
yeah.
and that they have this.
Well, the first day we were doing Verdi Requiem, and that has, the offertorio, which has this
Mm,
big cello thing.
thing.
It's like one of the things you have to do when you audition is play that, and it's the first day, you know, to play this, and I was very nervous about it. I'm sitting right on the front stand, and when the moment came, there was just all this sound, around me, and it was literally like, oh, well, there we go, we're going, and it just was so easy.
Mm,
It felt like I was floating kind of
like a
through it.
wave of
Yeah, because there
everything.
was such this, gesture coming from the whole section that it was like, oh, and it was just, it was a little bit the style of the orchestra. They just sort of go, they
Mm,
just do it. There's not much resistance. It's kind of the style of it a little bit. And it was like getting carried on this, and
mm,
and I realized, oh, I see. It's just actually very easy.
mm. That's
Uh,
great. Yeah.
yeah, and
No hesitancy at all with the sound itself, I guess.
what's that?
No hesitancy. Just
That's right, and it was very full, and everybody was doing it, and it made it simple, like there was nothing complicated about it suddenly, and it was like, oh, this isn't really that. Oh, it's actually easier, and there's nothing to worry about. It was like,
if everyone's pulling their weight, it's like that with everything, I guess. Then everyone's,
yeah,
it's just easier for many hands make light work, right?
yeah. It's something, and just the whole thing started to. I could see the simplicity of it. It just really wasn't.
Hmm.
you know, um, yeah, I mean, it was so that was kind of, I mean, it was first day. So it was like
Yeah.
a bam, like a real, a revelation.
Huh.
Oh, oh, this is actually easier than what I have been doing. Um, and I don't, all I have to do is just what I've been working to do, and it's fine. Um,
So then you went to LA principal cello, right? You were
yeah,
first chair, and it was before Dudamel, is that right?
that's
Before
right.
Dudamel came. Who
Yeah.
was conducting? I
That's
just,
Solonen.
oh yeah, Solonen. Yeah.
That's Solonen, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Composer, conductor.
Mhm.
What's different about that? When the conductor's a
Well,
composer,
I mean, LA is a completely different kind of thing, in every way. I mean, the repertoire was different. The orchestra, the sort of the focal points, musical points of the musicians are different. All the conductors were different. Um, it's like a different slate of people that
hmm,
go there. So I encountered, and I'd already been playing in orchestra for 12 years in Philadelphia, and I encountered conductors that I'd heard about for years that I'd never seen,
yeah.
like Pierre Boulez or,
Hmm.
you know, people like that. He didn't come to Philadelphia, you know, because it's just, Philadelphia has a certain kind of crowd, that goes there, and then there are some that I knew from Philly when I was in
Right.
LA,
Right.
but Esapeka. Yeah, I mean, he was very different from, like, I'd had Muti in Philadelphia and Savalish and very different kind of conductor and musician and interested in the repertoire was quite varied, and lots of things I'd never played before, which was like a lot of the reason why I went, because it had gotten to the point in Philadelphia where I just didn't really have to even look at what we were playing. I just showed up. It just I was like, come to rehearsal.
Yeah,
Oh, okay, we're doing
there
that.
was a certain repetition of,
Yeah, I was very,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, there would be occasionally new stuff, but I mean, hardly anything,
Hmm.
you know, that I hadn't already done. And and LA was the opposite. It was every week it was something new.
Hmm.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Fascinating. And then you've played a lot of chamber music and solo repertoire, but with a lot of wonderful chamber players. And what's it like when it doesn't work with chamber music? I mean, it's so intimate, right? You have three or four people, and it can be very wonderful. That's why you love to do it, I'm sure. But it can also be like a bit of a dysfunctional family, right? I mean, when you're really just three or four of you, and it's very personal, right? If you start to ask for changes from people around you, or
Okay, yeah. So that's the interesting thing. I've done Marlborough Music Festival for uh, since 1985, so that's like getting towards 40 years. And,
Marlborough, for people who don't know, is a place in a very high end chamber music situation in Vermont, right, Marlborough College.
yeah, it's a unique thing because it's older, experienced musicians playing with very, very talented, exceptional young people who are kind of at the beginning of their professional careers, generally speaking. And in a couple cases, sometimes they're, you know, but I mean, even somebody like, Hilary Hahn, I don't know if you know who she is, the violinist, you know, uh, she came there and I played with her a number of times. She was 14 or 15, but she was already concertizing, in
Right,
that.
right. But then you
Or
have people from the Guarneri Quartet or the Budapest
Ordinary
Quartet.
Quartet was all there. And initially it was sort of refugees basically coming from Europe after the war who lived in New York City and then in the summer would go up to Vermont to play chamber music together just for fun. And then they invited some young people to come to join them. And that's how it started. And then it evolved into this major thing. And Pablo Casal's got involved. And, it just kind of became Rudolf Serkin, a concert pianist, was the founder of it. So it sort of developed into this. You know,
But you were saying when you're there and playing with people,
The interesting thing is that the format of it is that you're not required to perform anything, so you just rehearse. And if something comes into focus and seems like it's going very well, then you propose it for performance, and then they make up a program based on whatever is being proposed that week,
hmm,
and they make programs from that. So there's no pressure to perform, so you can just rehearse, and you can you know, let things go. You can follow them all the way through. You can sort of go whatever path you want. And you're dealing with younger people who are very talented. They've got a lot of ideas about what they want to do in some cases they don't. And they and then you're someone who's played it before. You've played the piece before and had a lot of experience with it. And so there are a lot of dynamics there. They're working with each other, and then my participation is sort of like I tend to sort of let them kind of discover things and then just observe, and then if there needs to be a little direction one way or the other. But what I found over time doing this is that basically the thing is you kind of the trick I think is not to tell people how to play
hmm,
ever. you know, you never tell someone how to play something. You just like because they're not going to be able to do it the way you think they should anyway. And even if they tried, it's not going to be as good as what they would have done if they just did something else. Because nobody can, do we all have our ideas of what we want things to be like. And nobody else can really understand exactly what that is other than what we present as a player. So you can influence a little bit the way you're playing something. You can have, if that has an effect, that's one way. But to actually say, well, I think you should do this, you know, never works.
It's
You
very
kind of have to,
it's very subtle stuff that
yeah, right.
you're leading by example, or but just
That's It's more like that. And so that kind of carries over into all that, when I find that they're in them, but some people like to work in a very, I did for a while, I played in this group with Leonidas Kavakos and Peter Nagy, who's a pianist, Hungarian pianist, and they love to fight. Like they just fight and fight and fight and fight. And they play together all the time.
mm,
I mean, that's what they do. I mean, that's just the way it is. And then, they were trying to involve me in it, and I'm like, like, I don't know. I mean, I, I don't feel like it. I mean, I just,
you
I'm
need
not,
about having to take one side or the other side.
like, they would, I don't know. It was kind of, but I was, I mean, I was just interested in what they were talking about, but they were like specifically like going against each other and kind of, but this is how they worked. So there are different styles. Some
Some
people
people
work
feed
like that.
off that. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
some people do. I find that if people are kind of feel free to do what it is that they've, if you encourage them to kind of connect to how they feel about it, that's when they're going to play their best, and then it's going to ultimately create a narrative in the group where people understand what the other person is doing because they're doing it better, you know,
Yeah.
the way they want to do it, but it's better, and then it kind of, so if you can encourage that, it seems like it kind of ultimately sums up into something a little more valuable. But as soon as people start saying, oh, well, you should do this, and then they do it, and it's like, no, not like that, do it this, no, I mean like this. And then once you get into that kind of thing, nobody's happy with it. The person who's playing it doesn't feel good, you're dissatisfied, the whole thing kind of
Spirals
starts.
down or spirals
it,
up, really. It's
yeah, it
more,
kind of, that's right.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, it's
because
good
being
to
accepting, like just being open and accepting, like people are going to play how they're going to play. You can't, you need to accept that immediately. you know and then if you can handle that, then something can happen, I think.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, as a conductor, it's a tricky thing too, because you could easily say da 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 da, da, and you make a lot of decisions, and yet, you know, there's only so much time anyway to micromanage all that stuff. And so to just sort of somehow influence it and it moves in another way, or
Mhm.
or a better way maybe for everyone involved, for the whole, then you've got
Sounds
something.
good,
You know?
right?
But the
Yeah, that
assumption
sounds
that
great.
people
I mean,
know what they're doing and that they're artists and they're not machine pieces, that,
yes,
you know, uh,
it's
that's messier,
what they
but
give you.
you don't always get exactly what, but it's in the end, it's spiraling up. I guess that's the thing.
Yeah, so what you're describing is exactly the same thing, and I think I've seen this with conductors as well. Um, Savalas was really incredible this way. He would respond immediately to what he was hearing and work with it.
With his hands too.
Yes, just with his hands.
Mm.
Yeah, he and then if something didn't go well, he would do it again and he would change how he conducted it,
Uh-huh.
and it would be different.
But it's a real give and take connection that's going.
Absolutely, I felt like I was playing a sonata or something. It was like, kind of. Whereas what I found the conductors that had the most trouble were ones who didn't seem to really be. I remember one time in Philadelphia, we were doing a Prokofiev fourth piano concerto with the left hand, which I've never played. I don't know, that's the only time I ever played it. And, Prokofiev is often busy and a lot of stuff going on, and pizzicato, and then switch to this and that. And there's a lot going on. And it's very, very active. And the conductor was just go, just kind of blasting through it. And and then at one point he turned to me and I think he asked me a question. And I'm like, what? Like, I talk when I'm doing this. I'm like, what? And I realized it's like he didn't even realize anybody was playing. I mean, he just
Mm.
was completely
Yeah,
he
yeah.
had no idea like what was going on around him. He was just going,
Moving his
and
body.
it's
Yeah.
yeah, and the orchestra was kind of scrambling around to keep up with it, and it just sort of, and that's when Tony was like, oh, that's the missing link. Like if he's not listening to anything.
It's the listening part.
Yeah, he's just thinking about what he thinks it should be like, and he's sort of trying to implement that here, and it's like it's not coming out.
I know.
Because,
It's even in the conducting training where we were taught to conduct, to show people what you want to do. But it's not listen like mad and then kind of like just like you said, respond and sort of hook this
yeah,
wiring up between you and everybody, and then just sort of work with what's coming at you as well. Whether it's chamber music or conducting, it's so similar.
very
Or a
similar.
family, I guess it's the same. If it's a group of people, it's just people. But it's
Yeah.
fascinating to talk about it at that level. I mean, where for musicians, it's audible and like right there, you can't kind of take your hands off it. You have to be inside it, and it's happening to you.
I mean, I think the other thing that like some conductors are able to kind of give everyone the sense that they're aware of them,
Yeah,
like that even every single person, like that the conductor's like is aware of you and what you're doing all the time.
yeah.
So like Muti's really good at that. Like he's noticing everything, or like, and I had a couple of like really kind of strange experiences with Savalish that way, like where there was one time when um, we were doing Ein Heldenleben, Strauss Ein Heldenleben, big Strauss tone poem, huge piece. We were on tour, and I had been at the Marlborough Festival before the tour and then went directly to this. And so I had taken my mute off of my cello because I hadn't been using it. And there's one small section where that's muted in the Heldenleben, and but it's just a little short thing. And there was nothing else in the concert that had it. And there were other pieces we were playing, etc. So, and we were on tour. I was in London and I don't know where to get a mute. And so I just kind of like, just played softer or whatever. And then we went to another city somewhere and came in that section again. And I mean, you have to realize there's so much going on in this orchestra part. I mean, it's a massive score, with so much happening, right? And we get to the second city, and we got to that place, and I didn't put the mute on. I just played quieter, and then I felt something like I sensed that Savage was noticing that, but he didn't look at me. He didn't do anything. There was nothing. I just felt it. Like
Wow.
he knows I don't have a mute, you know. But there was literally nothing. He was just doing what he normally did. I just felt something, you know. So I thought, all right, well, I'll get one. So we were in some city. I finally found some mute somewhere, And we get to that place, and we have to realize there's so many other things happening, of course, on tour and all this. We get to that place, and I put the mute on, and he smiled at me,
Wow.
and I was just like, oh my god! I was like, oh my god, that was real. Like it was telepathy. Like he gave me this telepathic
Fascinating.
message.
And the conductor can have so many choices. I mean, I'd heard that years ago at Curtis that Reiner, when Fritz Reiner was conducting, and people would come without a mute, he'd throw them out. I
Uh,
mean, it can make you crazy when you look in and you're like, they don't have a mute on, and
yeah.
if you see this, but yet the idea that there's this kind of connection with people.
There was he didn't do anything. He didn't look at me. He didn't make any there was no facial expression. I just
I
felt
mean,
something.
there's a book about
I don't know where, I don't,
there's a biography about Karajan where he's in an airport with Elizabeth Schwarzkopf, and he says, "You see that person over there? They were there. They were sitting with their backs to them. There were people. The backs. They were looking at the backs of people's heads. He said, you see that one? Yeah, I can make her turn around." And in 5 seconds, she turned around. Who's looking at me? Schwarzkopf tells the story.
Yeah.
So there's some sort of like,
There's an extra thing. I kind of noticed that with Dudamel sometimes. There would be little things where, you know, it was the same thing. It wouldn't be like there wouldn't be any kind of communication at all, but then I would just feel something and I would change something a little bit, how I did it, and then
I
he
don't
would
know
be
if it's wanting
back.
something to be a certain way so much that in some way or other it starts to morph. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
I know that feeling of being up there and it's not just wanting one person to do it your way. You'd like everyone. I mean,
Yeah.
and it can be you
Well,
can't demand it.
I don't think that everyone is having that same experience. I mean, I don't think that
Right,
that
right.
necessarily, it really depends. I mean, I felt very, very closely connected with Savage, and we actually played together. We played chamber music together. He's a pianist. Yeah, I mean, we collaborated, so there was a definite rapport.
Hmm.
Um, uh, I did. I felt that I did feel that with Dudamel. I felt like he had that kind of capability. Also, there was a lot of communication that was nonverbal, that was not involving conducting, that was happening musically.
Right.
Um, but that was not every. Those are like, and Muti also. Although that was more weird, complicated. Like, there were times when like I had no idea what he was trying to do or thinking. I just didn't understand.
Hmm.
Sometimes I think yeah, I didn't always understand the motives behind what was going on. I appreciated everything about what he did, but it just, on a personal level, I think there just wasn't that kind of understanding. But
It's
I did feel
complicated.
that was,
He's kind of complicated, right?
yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on there that I don't know about, you know. But with Savalish, it wasn't like that. It was more, and same thing with Dudamel. I felt those two, I kind of had that kind of. I think Simon Rattle is someone who kind of relies very, very much on all of that. Like that's kind of his MO, is sort of connecting with the people more than actually conducting.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You see,
It's all about getting people in the spirit to want this to happen.
yeah, but when you see somebody like Savalish, he could do it both.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But I mean, Simon Merrill did something really great in a rehearsal once, which was really clever. Which is when I kind of learned something about like why he's as successful as he is. He We were doing Mahler Second Symphony, and there was this place in I don't even remember which movement it's in, but it's like in this um, starts with the cellos, the second half of the cello section, very softly playing this rhythm like dum bottom bottom bottom. This place bottom, like that's very very soft, and it's very like sort of um, and he wanted it to be softer. He wanted it to be like less real, and they were kind of going doo 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 doo. They're playing very like clearly and focused, and it was like no no no, he wanted it to be like more, and he kept saying no, it just sounds like dust, just this kind of thing, and he kept saying this, and I just kept same old thing. They weren't getting it, and he wasn't going to give up on it because it didn't sound good. I mean, this needed to change, and he was really going after it, and it wasn't working, and the orchestra started to kind of unravel. Like when that happens in a rehearsal, when somebody keeps going after something and it's not working,
Yeah. Yeah.
things start kind of, there starts to get a little noisy, and people start not paying attention, and they start, and it starts getting a little unruly, right? So people, and so then finally he just says, play it even softer than the talking. And everybody cracked up, everybody shut up, and they did it. And it was like,
Because
ah, it was like, that's how you do it, right?
they were listening to the talking, they were watching that he was aware of the room, that the whole thing.
Of the whole thing in one sentence.
Fascinating.
And it was coming apart, I mean, if you turned around and said, "Shh, everybody be quiet," and
Right.
all this kind of stuff, forget it. It was like he nailed it. It's wit. Like he knew exactly what to do and what to say to kind of get things back together, and get what he wanted. And it did work. Like they actually, I think the fact that everybody was paying attention made them think that they needed to, I mean, it's like it just hit on so many levels.
The right thing at the right time.
Yeah, and that's what he can do. You
Wow,
know,
fascinating.
and you got to be able to do that if you're going to conduct, the Berlin Philharmonic.
Yeah, the
You
right thing
know,
at the right
even then, good luck. But
time. Yeah.
still
People. Yeah.
going to be
And it's
hard.
great to talk
Yeah.
about things, just really under the hood, things that people don't see who are in the audience. They
Oh
don't see
yeah.
rehearsals, so it's great. And we look so much forward to having you back, or having you in, actually, us playing together again, but
Yeah.
having you in next year. We're Rock Hill's putting its season together, and with all the
Okay.
hope that we're back to normal. So,
Well, I just got my vaccine scheduled for Saturday.
oh, great. Okay.
Or
So things are moving forward.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get one soon. So,
Okay.
all right, Peter. Thanks so
All
much.
all
Okay.
right. Thanks. Okay. Bye.